Okay. Multimodal analysis of a TikTok POV video.
My name is Audrey Willoughby. I'm a doctoral student of linguistics at the University of Milan, Italy, and my research revolves around humor and multimodality in digital communication. Today, I'm going to share a little bit with you on a case study, multimodal analysis of a TikTok point of view or POV video, which serves really as a first step towards building a corpus study on the topic. The aims of the study are to investigate how the multimodal elements in TikTok videos can be categorized and analyzed to better understand their contributions to meaning, to explore how the general theory of verbal humor can account for incongruity and humor mechanisms across modes in this digital context, and to better understand how creators use these multimodal resources to create humor. Now, when I say multimodality, I'm referring to the use and interaction of multiple modes of communication in meaning making, so visual, auditory, etc. Multimodality as a field really emphasizes that meaning is not made through a single mode, such as language alone, but through the integration of several semiotic resources that work together. So in the context of TikTok, that might include, in a video, textual overlays, filters, trending sounds on top of the speech itself. Each resource has distinct affordances or the potential or limitation of a resource to convey meaning. This is shaped by its inherent properties and the context of its use. That's very important. So if a creator wanted to imply a non-chronological unfolding of time in their video, they might choose to use techniques such as jump cuts, textual overlays that state something explicit about the time, such as 3 years earlier, rewind effects, and so on. So those jump cuts and the textual overlays, those are the resources, while the affordance is their ability to convey a nonlinear passing of time. Okay. Two frameworks were applied to this case study, starting with the general theory of verbal humor. This is most likely not a framework that I need to explain in great depth to this audience. We know that it serves as a theory of competence that identifies and categorizes the underlying humor mechanisms in humorous interactions. It explains how humor is systematically constructed and understood by focusing on the 6 knowledge resources that you can see below in the table. If you want to take just a moment to refresh on those. Okay. Now, to better understand the affordances, which are always placed in their cultural contexts, systemic functional multimodal discourse analysis, or much easier, SFMDA, was also used. This framework really looks at how meaning is created through the interplay of modes within their sociocultural contexts. So this is where the affordances would come in. The SFMDA shows how TikTok's features really shape meaning making within specific cultural contexts. This reveals how platform tools and performance decisions influence interactions and expression across the various modes. So taken together, the general theory of verbal humor would focus on the internal mechanics of humor, identifying what makes something funny in the TikTok video. So here we're looking at the competence of humor, while SFMDA would expand on the mechanisms identified by the general theory of verbal humor by analyzing how they are performed and embedded within the TikTok sociocultural context. So here we're really looking at the performance level. And together, these frameworks really help us understand how humor is constructed in these videos and how it resonates socially and culturally. Now let's shift to the content up for analysis. Among the many popular trends found on TikTok is the point of view trend, or POV. The idea of the POV trend really has origins in literature and film, doesn't it? Where it indicates the perspective from which a story is told or depicted. The POV camera angle in video games refers to a visual perspective that allows the player to experience the game world through the eyes or perspective of a specific character, really immersing the player in that experience. Now, initially, the point of view trend on TikTok adopted that camera angle, placing the viewer in the physical place of the person that we are being asked to relate to, as seen in the screenshot to the left. but over time has shifted or expanded rather to include videos that also simply invite the audience to imagine themselves in the reality depicted in the situation or experience unfolding on screen without necessarily being physically placed in the eyes of the individual. The key characteristic of this trend, visual in any case, is that textual overlay towards the top of the screen in usually white font with the black outline, POV : followed by the scenario in which they want you to imagine yourself in. This trend has been found to foster community connections, enhance relatability, and empathy among its users. Now, the video under examination for this analysis is a high engagement point of view video titled "That One Teacher During an Exam." The video creates a classroom setting using a green screen feature, placing the content creator in a room with a blackboard behind her on the wall, surrounded by student-style desks and chairs. First, I want to take a look at and listen to the audio and the sound together, and then we will come back and look more closely at the other elements involved. So here is a representation of the video as it unfolds over the 30 seconds that it lasts. The images should be looked at in rows, so starting from the top, going from left to right, and then the second row from left to right. Each image represents a segment of the video, and to the right of each image is the time span of each segment represented by the images. The dialogue is transcribed and placed under each segment during which it occurs. So the red text is the teacher. That indicates the teacher's speech, while the purple is the student's speech. So let's first take a quick listen to the audio, and then we'll go into more detail.
Hello. Make sure you are reading the questions carefully. I see a lot of people mess up the short answer. I'm not going to say names, but make sure you are reading the questions carefully.
Okay. Now, I would like to provide more context for the visuals. So the camera angle is from the visual point of view of a student taking a test. This is contextually understood as he's never actually visible in the video. We only hear his voice, and her direct eye contact implies his position. The video, as you heard, opens to sounds of pencils scribbling on paper in an otherwise silent room, and the teacher is in front and center with her back to the front of the classroom, facing where we would assume the students are sitting. 1 second in, she tightly folds her sweater across herself, keeping her arms clutching the sweater, and is looking around with pursed lips and squinty eyes, observing the student's work. It gives the impression that she has skepticism or suspicion. She walks up to the point of view student. She ignores his greeting of, hello. And then she leans in and looks closely and skeptically at the student's work with the wide eyes and the pursed lips. She tilts her head back into the side and then takes a step back, and her gaze diverts to the left and immediately starts talking loudly to the entire class, as you heard, urging the students to double check their work. The teacher then explicitly says that she is not going to name names. Then, and this is a very important detail, at around second 16, she, after saying she's not going to name names, makes direct eye contact with the point of view student and raises her hands in the air, palms out, wide-eyed, and pauses and maintains that eye contact for just a second. And then she puts her hands down and she diverts her gaze, her attention back to the entire class again, and continues urging the students once again to check their answers, and this is where the video ends. I also want to point out for just a moment the hashtags and caption that are correlated with the video. The hashtags are visible in blue, where, among others, we see clues about what resources were used, such as the green screen, situation-related clues, and even what one could argue as an explicit marker of humorous intent with the hashtag comedy. Let's make special note, though, of the caption. So the caption is in black among the hashtags, and it reads, "They're low-key trying to help you," with a laughing emoji. This will come up later again in the analysis, so just pin that, if you will. Using Elan annotation software, I annotated and time-stamped salient semiotic resources, including text overlays, visual compositions such as background, setting, characters, gesture, facial expression, movement, sound, and speech, among others. I then applied a script-based segmentation approach to track shifts, introduction and shifts in semantic scripts. So as we know, scripts are mental representations of concepts or expected scenarios. So in this case, the video activates, for example, classroom, teacher, exam, through both verbal and nonverbal cues within the video. For this study, I define a script segment as a stretch of video where a dominant salient semantic script is consistently reinforced across one or more modes. These scripts can overlap, as the nature of a video with so many multimodal resources happening at one time can activate new scripts simultaneously or in a staggered fashion. A new segment is marked when a new script is introduced, significantly modified, or reinforced differently through additional salient multimodal cues. For example, a new sound cue enhancing a sad script that was already activated with the visual of a crying character at the opening of a video, just for an example. By coding videos in this way, humor construction can be systematically tracked through script manipulation, identifying how multimodal cues interact to create incongruity and reinforce meaning shifts over the time span of the video. Okay, now showcasing this method of script segmentation directly from the Elan tool is visually rather convoluted and difficult to understand. So this is just a visual representation of how it works. This by no means is an exhaustive list of the scripts activated in this video, but meant simply to exemplify the method. So at the top, starting from the left to the right, is the video unfolding with the chunks of time that span for each sketch, if you will, from the video displayed above each image. Below the semantic scripts that are identified in the moments they are introduced, and the form of line indicates in which mode they were introduced. So if you look in the top left, there's a key that indicates which mode each line represents in the visual below. For example, at the very beginning, we see teacher is introduced immediately in the textual overlay. We see it as soon as the video opens. Around 1 second in, this script is reinforced and slightly modified by the visual presentation of the character through her gestures and facial expressions as not just a teacher, but a strict teacher. And around second 16, the script is modified again to strict mean teacher through what she says and does to the point of view student. As you can see, they are all continuations or modifications of ongoing scripts, with the exception of here, where anonymity is introduced and seconds later replaced with public exposure, creating an incongruity of actual versus non-actual based on what she says will happen versus what actually happens through her actions. So this is where she said she's not going to name names, but then indicates otherwise who the student was. Now, two interesting points stand out here. One is the fact that the incongruity is comprised of scripts across two different modes. She verbally states that she's not going to name names, but visually, through gesture and facial expression, eye contact, she breaks that claim by, in fact, identifying said student. And two, the punchline occurs essentially 2/3 of the way through the performance, which is not really in line with humor studies that typically find the punchline towards the end of a humor sequence. I also want to take a moment to look back at the caption and the role that it plays in the entire humorous interaction. So the caption, as we saw before, said "they're," meaning teachers, low key, which is kind of a colloquial way to say discreetly. So they're low-key trying to help you, followed by the laugh cry emoji. As we saw within the video, the primary incongruity was actual versus non-actual, and the video as a whole activates a negative teacher script. But when expanding the analysis to include the caption as well as part of the interaction, that negative script somewhat softens as the caption reframes the intent. So we go from a strict mean teacher script to, okay, the teacher is strict, but her motivation is to actually help the students with her behavior, even if in an undesirable way. The laughing emoji in the captions can signal a more playful intent, and the target of the humor also shifts and is reframed. The video alone targets the teacher by mocking that stereotype of a mean instructor, while the meaning underlying the caption together with the video reframes the teacher target as less severe. And it also opens the target to include the student who might need the help as well. So that caption does not modify the original script in this video, the script opposition, excuse me, but it does reframe the audience's perception of the humorous interaction from mockery to a more playful relatability. So to summarize, by exploring the data of this case study, we have identified that the activation of scripts occurs across various modes, which highlights the interplay of those various modes in the construction of humor. Specifically, we found that the incongruity of this video was built across two distinct modes. So script 1 was activated directly from the teacher's spoken language, while script 2 from her gestures and her facial expressions. So again, demonstrating the role of multimodal interaction in creating humor in this video. We saw that the position of the punchline in this video was different from what humor studies typically find, in that it occurred slightly more than halfway through, while typically we find them towards the end of the humorous interaction. And we found that the caption, when considered as a component in humorous interaction, reframes the intent and target of the interaction, which really highlights the role of the platform's features and their affordances in this multi-layered meaning making. So the next steps are to expand this analysis to a corpus of point of view videos. In doing so, we hope to better understand how creators combine or contrast modes and resources to construct humor and identify humor styles that are unique to this trend and platform. A larger study would also allow for the analysis of how TikTok's resources enable or constrain specific humor mechanisms and multimodal combinations. And with a larger data set, one could investigate how humor in this digital space reflects participatory culture and contributes to digital identity construction by expanding the analysis to include comments focusing on audience engagement and content trends. So that is where I will leave us. And I think that we have some time for questions or opening discussion or feedback.